Cool. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Kathy and I. And we think we've got a good one for you this this week. And of course, we can't ignore the big elephant in the room about what's happened since we last talked. So we'll be going there. But anyway, first of all, I am Louise Edington, the Cosmic Owl of Cosmic Owl Astrology. And my website is louiseedington.com. I have two memberships, the Spiral Weave, which is, the lower level where we get one caller a month and other benefits. I also have the Spiral Codex, which is for those that want to go really deep into astrology. We actually have weekly calls there. But I'm also going to mention my Series Reborn workshop, because that is in the nature of what's going on with the energies right now. I keep adding things to it. I'm having downloads after downloads for it. So, it's going to be off the charts. So come if you want to learn more about Ceres in your chart or for you as an astrologer.
Hi, I'm Kathy Beal. My website is empowermentunlimited.net. My YouTube channel is Professional Aquarian. And I have a Patreon, patreon.com/Kathy Beal. And I have an event on Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., called Take Back Your Energy. And I will be actually leading directly a number of techniques that I have made freely available, but sometimes people like to hear it directly from the person. So it's a nice, calming, safe environment, and I have one for everyone for getting your energy back out of social media. There's a link to sign up. I've got a post about it on YouTube. I've got a little video about it called Take Back Your Energy. And I have a big, long orange stripe near the top of my website, empowermentunlimited.net, that will also take you directly to the registration link.
Well, I should say I've got that link. I've got a whole page on my website, Series Reborn Immersion, and on my socials, Cosmic Owl Astrology, everywhere I've been posting the link. And I think this Series Reborn Immersion will also help you to really tune out of the crazy out there and go within as well. So, maybe check us both out. That's on March 21st and 22nd. And the astrology for that is perfect as well for Series 2. So we're gonna go real quick, I think, through our usual beginning, and I don't think I'm even going to share any charts when I talk about the upcoming aspects, because we're going to do a lot of talking, but we'll quickly talk about degrees and things on a few charts before we do a lot of talking about this moment that we're in. But go
Start
through
with the news.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Most of what I have is showing how Mars, planet of action, aggression, attack, the military, has been coloring many, many things that have been going on. So when we last spoke, Mars was about to have an action demanding a square with Uranus, the unpredictable change agent, things flying through the sky. And that was, in fact, when Israel and the U.S. first bombed Iran. One of the targets was a girls' school. Women are associated with Taurus, which is the sign that Uranus is in. And the New York Times has reported that anonymous bettors placed hundreds of bets on the app Polymarket hours before the strike. Taurus has to do with money. All right. Then Mars moved across the degree, activated the solar eclipse from February 17th. This was a king must die level eclipse. The U.S. actually took out the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah. Pakistan attacked Afghanistan, so we aren't the only ones who are warring right now. Iran's response immediately was to bomb a luxury hotel, Taurus, in Dubai, and then hit U.S. embassies in Riyadh and Kuwait City. And there have been airstrikes near an airport in Abu Dhabi and many, many other places. Israel moves into Lebanon. Israel attacks Lebanon and takes out the leader of Hezbollah. So that's several leaders who have left the planet just since this. Then Mars moved into Pisces, a sign of the waters, sign of things that are kind of fuzzy, hazy, not quite attached to reality. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the biggest um, places for oil and other things to move through. I think it's like the fifth largest um, point like this. And so Uranus and Taurus is now having a huge impact on world economy, and we're starting to see a ripple effect of other countries being involved, other countries being threatened, economy problems spreading and spreading and spreading. Mars in Pisces, faith. We will go into this in more detail. It's reported that complaints are made that commanders are telling troops that Trump was anointed by Jesus to usher in Armageddon and then the second coming. More about that in a minute. The U.S. bombed Iranian warships on the water. We torpedoed a ship, and that was in exercises, and left the survivors in the water, which is not what the rules of engagement are. And in fact, in the self-undoing aspect of Mars and Pisces, Hegseth proclaimed that this will not be a woke war and we will not follow the rules of engagement, which is saying we're going to violate international law. And by the way, does no one remember what happened at Nuremberg? Also, this endangers our own troops, because if we're not playing by the rules, why should anyone treat our troops by the rules? Self-defeating. All right, I have one sweet little thing for you, actually two that you will enjoy. Mars in Pisces. The Ring the Fish doorbell is back. There is a cam that's fixed on one side of a canal lock in Utrecht, and when enough fish are there, you can like hit something and it rings a doorbell for an attendant to come and open the canal so the fish will not be eaten by predators. That's a beautiful playing out of it. Also, the person who owns the Trump Kennedy Center domain has bought the JeffreyEpstein.com domain, and he's been posting Trump Epstein images, and a walk of shame has shown up in D.C. outside the White House, like the Hollywood Walk
I
of Shame.
saw that. I
Saw that?
saw that. I love it. And it's getting closer to the White House, isn't it? They keep.
Yeah, and I'll be talking about art as activism with my next guest on my Celestial Compass show on the 16th of March. So
Yeah.
hold that thought. All right, Mercury retrograde in Pisces. Here's a doozy of an example. Mercury rules communication, but it also rules votes. And Mercury retrograde in Pisces can be confusion, can be misdirection, can be lack of clarity. Well, in the Texas primary this week, the GOP changed the long-standing practice of both parties' primaries being in the same polling location. But this word did not get out to the Democratic voters in a number of the counties. And the Secretary of State site did not upload the new maps. So if anybody went to look, they were getting old information, but they didn't know it was old information. So Democratic voters were showing up in the wrong place and having to go from place to place to place to place, so much so that courts ordered a 2-hour extension on voting in 2 counties, including Dallas County, which is Jasmine Crockett's home turf.
And of course, not everybody has time to go back to the polls. You know.
The
Yeah,
Attorney
anyway.
General got the Texas Supreme Court to basically undo the 2-hour extension in Dallas County because that court didn't give him notice. The court in the other county did, and notice was required. So those votes were segregated and they were counted and to see if there would have been enough to change the tally, and they weren't. So anyway, it's just the whole confusion, and just mark this way, okay? They're clever people there. This is why, I'm going to stop it with that. All right. So all of the aspects that we've been talking about together played out with the Russian mogul who called Ghislaine Maxwell his soulmate was found dead in his Moscow apartment. So that continues to go. Venus sextile Uranus. Venus, women, sextile pathway opening, Uranus, something shocking. The Republicans actually confronted Kristi Noem in a hearing about abuses, and I think one of them actually asked her about whether she was sleeping with someone who was not her husband, with her husband sitting behind her. Trump removed her from the position of head of DHS. The lunar eclipse in Virgo was was pulled in her Mars in Pisces and created a T-square to her Jupiter in Sagittarius, which is a sign of foreign relations, and she gets a new multinational job completely made up as a special envoy to the just created Shield of the Americas, a coalition with Latin American countries targeting border security, immigration, and trafficking. And Sheldon Whitehouse spent nearly half an hour on the floor of the Senate reading connections between Epstein and Russia and Trump out loud. That's what I have for
Love
the
him.
news.
Okay, so how am I going to do the aspects? What I've decided to do is I'm just going to show you the next new moon chart and kind of describe the process from today, which is March the 5th to the 18th. So, we have by that new moon, we'll still have all of this in Pisces, right? And we've talked a lot about this big move from Capricorn to Aquarius to Pisces. This is the end of the zodiac, and things have started to move into Aries. Ceres is moved into Taurus by then, but Jupiter will be direct. So I'm just going to list the aspects moving towards that instead of moving the chart the whole time, because it gets a bit complicated. But today, the Sun reaches 15 Pisces and makes that unbroken flow aspect to Jupiter, which is still retrograde today. And then tomorrow, March the 6th, Venus moves into Aries. So you can see how fast she's moving between today and the March the 18th. She's moving from the last degree of Pisces to 15 Aries.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, go on.
Today's the 6th.
Oh, the 6th. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I started on the 5th.
Yeah, right. So Venus is making this move as we're recording.
Yes, she is actually. She did it already this morning, actually. 3:48 a.m. she did it. Sorry, I'm always a bigger picture. I don't care what day things are on exactly. March the 7th, so that's tomorrow. The Sun and Mercury will have their cazimi in the middle of the retrograde, and that's at 16 Pisces, and that's that point of clarity. We covered some of this last week, but this is all the flow really of the planets moving forward. Okay. Also tomorrow, on the 7th, Venus will meet Neptune on her way through Aries as she moves through quickly. And these are going to be very interesting days surrounding money and women again. And as it starts to happen, we're already getting confirmed reports that it was the USA that bombed a girls' school, right? They tried to say it was, false flag or things like that and all that. And then March the 8th, Venus meets Saturn. I always find that, and we said this last week again, as like a real reality check, kind of slap in the face aspect. Things, we're probably going to hear more news about money, women, all those things. Any more to say about 7th and 8th? They're big days, really. So.
Well, a couple of things. First off, this is female goddess, warrior goddess energy rising and rising and rising. And when Venus hits Saturn, I think the reality of what this event is costing us and the number of munitions we're blowing through and the actual money involved, I think will get very clear.
Yeah, I think so. It's already being talked about, isn't it? So out there in the ethers. And apparently Iran's been planning for years and years for this with their drones that are just causing mayhem everywhere in other countries. Anyway, so Mercury on March the 9th will reach that 15 degrees Pisces point and make that unbroken flow to Jupiter. It's just this, ongoing kind of erosion and truth appearing. I think that's the aspect. We've had several groundwater trines involving Jupiter. And Jupiter on the 9th is at its station point because it stations direct on the 10th. And that's what's happening on March the 10th. Jupiter stations direct at 15 degrees Cancer, 5 minutes. And I always think the 15 degrees of any sign are a pivot point. And, the world points are the fixed signs, 15 degrees, which are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. But just as, I work with astrology, I always see when planets do something significant at that 15th degree, it's a turning point. So tides are turning in water signs. Okay.
And I see also a
Mm-hmm.
fire hose of information. Mercury has
Oh,
been retrograde, and he's going to bring what he has brought, what he's been dredging up
mm-hmm.
to his meeting with the sun, and then when he trines Jupiter, tsunami, overflow, all kinds, and you know
Mm-hmm.
stuff involving the water, stuff involving
Mm-hmm.
loss, stuff involving families and people and
Mm-hmm.
just and our country because cancer,
Yeah.
we're a cancer country.
Yep. And so Sun on March the 11th, the Sun will get to 20 Pisces and will conjunct Nessus, which we've talked about a lot, revealing abuses of power, toxicity. And one thing that's coming up for me with all the things we're going to look at and we'll talk about is the toxicity of the messianic kind of rapture kind of side of all the major religions, the Abrahamic religions. We've got some real interesting insights about the connections with those, right?
Mhm.
So we're not just talking about everybody that just goes to a church. We are talking about the extremes who have kind of believe in this kind of end times eschatology and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. So on that same day as well, on March the 11th, Jupiter and Pallas Athena will also make that water trine. And she's that kind of wise justice warrior. She's divine feminine goddess as well. So it's again, we're kind of seeing more and more news is going to come to light and all the things. Because it's just such a process. I didn't want to get too in the weeds on every day because it's just madness. But March the 13th, I think, is a very big day because Mars is going to hit the North Node on that day at that 8-degree mark where the nodes have sat right through the eclipses, where Venus was conjunct the North Node, where Mercury will station direct conjunct that North Node. That is a hot, hot degree. And you've already talked about the water events with Mars in Pisces.
Mhm.
We had did you mention the boats that were torpedoed as well and things? I
Yes.
couldn't even, sorry,
Yeah.
I blanked
Oh
a bit
no.
in that moment. So we're going to probably see more water events. Would you agree with
Oh yeah.
that approach? Yeah, yeah. Then on March the 15th, I have to mention that Ceres moves into Taurus, which is, the great mother goddess as well. And I think Taurus is the sign she's most associated with about our literal values and physical needs, because Taurus is very much related to all the senses of the body. So, we're going to start finding that, prices are going up, food supply is going to probably be affected in some way with all of this happening. And then, yeah, I'm going to mention it. March the 16th, 2 days before the next new moon, Venus has reached 12 Aries already and will square off to Pholus, who is Centaur, who's been Pandora's boxing and revealing a lot more as well, letting all the kind of sins of the current age out of the box, I think, so we can see it. But
I
also,
think I'm
it,
sorry.
they're also being acted on. Yes, go on. Yeah.
No, I think that women and women's stories will be a huge piece of this.
Oh,
women saying stop it, or a lot of, because Pholus is in the third house of communication.
Mm.
So I would imagine this is a time when very strategic drops of information come out.
I mean, I'm going to say it. It's been the files have been released. The interviews with the Epstein survivor who says that she accidentally bit our current leader's member, let's say, and he hit her because of it. And nobody's talking about it. It's just like this is kind of the Fowler stuff. We're seeing it, and it's like, what? But I think women are going to rise up and say this is ridiculous. So anyway, talking about 15-degree mark, Venus gets to 15 degree on March the 18th and squares off to Jupiter. And that harks back to August the 12th last year, when Venus and Jupiter were conjunct at 14 Cancer, conjunct dog star Sirius, which is the sun of our sun, which was the start of their cycle. I think something might come back from August. You might remember what's
I'm racking my brain while you're talking. I
no,
don't know what.
I'm sure it will. Yeah, so we'll see, right? And then we have this new moon, and we're going to finish there because this is the seventh new moon at 28 degrees. And we're going to see that that 28-degree mark has been significant in these current events. It is really significant. But this is also a new moon at the end of the zodiac as we're shifting into all these planets are faster moving ones are all going to move into Aries. Mercury will go direct to move into Aries. Mars will move into Aries. Obviously, Sun and Moon will. Pallas Athena will. Nessus is slower moving and won't. But we're at this end times, and it kind of makes me laugh that they're talking about the rapture and things. Not really, because it's horrible, but you know, the end of the zodiac. This is literally the end of the zodiac, and we've just had that Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 Aries for the first time since 4361 BCE, and we'll talk more about that. So we are at the end times, and I don't think it's going to play out as they think it's going to, but we'll see, I guess. What do you say?
I want to assure everybody the sun will continue to rise.
It will.
Life will go on, and we're heading.
Mm.
Things are really intense and volatile and fiery
Mhm.
into April, and then things just change. They just start
They
changing, and
do.
we're in a vastly, vastly, vastly different landscape
Oh,
by summer.
vastly. And
Everything's going to be
In
rewired.
July, all these slow moving planets all make these major aspects to each other at 4 degrees, and 4 degrees is a number of stability, and we didn't know these planets existed, um, you know uh, for some of the history we're going to talk about. So we're entering a phase we really don't know what's coming, but many of us astrologers kind of tune into a lot of the other things that are happening in the world, and most of us think we're going to be okay. Better than
I
a
agree.
new paradigm is starting.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
You'll hear the phrase extinction burst a lot.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, this is their extinction burst. So when we talk about all of this is talking about the worst of the worst. So we're not criticizing anybody's faith or anything like that. Both of us have stories we're probably not going to share, but organized religion. I lived in a war zone, and religious hate, and organized religion is not my thing, especially when it's used for hate, which is going to come up. But the current leaders of this conflict are so connected to this holy war. I've got to call it a holy war of the Abrahamic religions, basically. But first, we're going to look at the nice chart.
Yeah, before we get into that, let's look at our white knight, our legal white knight.
Yes, exactly. That's what I mean, the nice chart. Yeah. We both are a big fan of this guy. So Kathy mentioned that he, well, you tell the story because you follow the news bits
Oh,
in
well,
detail more than me.
Sheldon Whitehouse has a terrific research staff, and he periodically gets up in Congress with placards and presentations and pointers and stuff. And he's got a long running thing about the captured court. Well, his current topic is drawing connections between stuff that Epstein was doing and people in Russia and Trump, and showing how they were all interrelated. There is a video on his YouTube channel of his speech on the floor of the Senate on March 5th. It is just under 30 minutes. You can read the transcript. Many of you will recognize many of the names, but he just weaves it all together so sensibly and clearly.
Yeah. And so I'll put this latest new moon chart around his oh, I've lost it, but I'll get it back again. And remember, I've said it's the 7th new moon at 28 degrees, and the last one was a new moon solar eclipse at 28 Aquarius. So the new moons all moved through the signs right back to last October. So unless we can move it around a little bit if you like, Kathy, but I just kind of wanted to show there's the new moon. So this is where we're coming up to. And I always think 6th house is a real house of service if somebody is really living from their and this is his solar chart. Of course, we don't know a time, but this is a real house of doing useful and meaningful service in the world. And this new moon is right at the start of his 6th house, but he's got his Sun and Neptune at 26 and 27. So all of these new moons would be aspecting that. He's got his Pluto, though, exactly opposite that eclipse that we had on February the 17th. The eclipse was at 28 Aquarius, opposing his Jupiter and Pluto. So he's like bringing out those big kind of secrets and and the rubbish to the surface, right? Feels kind of impelled to do so. There's plenty of other things we could talk about, but I do notice that he has a 0 Aquarius Chiron, which has been a hot degree because that's where we had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at the end of 21, where we had Venus-Ceres-Pluto conjunct at the end of 24. It's he's got a lot going on. Any more you want to say about him?
Yes, I think 3 or 4 things. First off, that Sun Neptune in Libra, he has it's like law is his religion. He believes in the underpinnings of our legal system, and there's a slight idealism that colors all of that. Secondly, could you put the other chart back up?
Oh yeah, sure. I just wanted to emphasize that for people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because there are a couple of other things. Okay. So notice that Uranus at 28 Taurus, actually, it's been at 27. It's been squaring his solar midheaven in Cancer. So he's been bringing things to light about money and corruption and he's doing it for his country.
And it's square his Pluto.
It is square. Well, okay, about his Pluto. The thing I want to say about that is in July, the North Node is going to move into Aquarius. And he's got his Jupiter-Pluto conjunction is opposing the U.S. people, the U.S. moon. And as as the North Node moves into that, I've been saying, and I said this on my last Celestial Compass show, that's going to set off the Pluto and the Jupiter Pluto of late boomers. And really, I think there's like an invitation to step into their power even more. And yeah,
Mm.
because I know people are going to say awful things about the boomers in the context in the comments here. Okay, fine, dump on us. But this is a moment. Some of us haven't been doing that stuff, but this
I'm
is a
not
moment.
one.
But I am,
Don't dump on
and
me.
um, I think this is a moment of a lot of people really, really stepping up who are boomers of the late 50s. And in that regard, as Jupiter moves forward, in June, it's going to move across his solar move midheaven and then into his 10th house, his most public house, his career. And when it moves into Leo at the very, very end of June, it will in July move over. It's just going to activate and expand and draw more attention to him, and it's going to do something with his Uranus. So there's a long fuse with the probability of more of what he has been doing and doing and doing coming full circle and coming out, because Jupiter, things tend to come back around again when Jupiter's involved. So he's not
And
just standing on the floor of the Senate speaking to five
oh,
people.
and can I say as well though, it's or this is also this Pluto Jupiter is is conjunct our apparent leaders, ascendant and Mars. His Mars
Mm-hmm.
at 26 Leo and the ascendant at 29 Leo. So a lot of it's going to be around the current um, representative, apparently, of this country, let's say.
And the same impact on the number two guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So the whole administration, really. So yeah, Uranus is because Uranus only recently stationed direct to go square to all of this for the third time. Watch things unfolding as it does, I think.
right.
Yeah. So yeah. So I just wanted to share. You may have seen it around social media. Some people, um, I think I saw it on threads first from an astrologer. A lot of astrologers have shared this, but I want to share it quickly. All three of the main leaders involved in this new war, and I'm going to call it a war because it is, were born on the day of an eclipse. So let's start with the leader of Iran. I set this for the exact moment of the eclipse because I don't know a time. I do know where he was born, but he was born on April the 19th, 1939 in Mashhad, Iran. And look at this, talking of 28 degrees. He was born on a new moon eclipse. This was actually a solar annular eclipse at 28 Aries. So with those new moons, going through all those 28 degrees, he's had a new moon exactly on that. And so, oh no, he hasn't. His is after. But anyway, it's that 28 degree. Everything's been aspecting all of the things. And it's said that he was ill, knew he was dying. So when the bombing started, he refused to go into hiding because his version of Islam, I want to stress that there are versions of Islam and all of these religions, believes in kind of martyrdom and the return of Mahdi, they call it. So the day of judgment, eschatology emerges before the day of judgment to end injustice, tyranny, and corruption. And Mahdi will restore righteousness, unite Muslims, and rule as a caliph. So, this end time kind of story is going to come up over and over and over again. So, and a lot of Sunni Muslim extreme version has a history of people who like do martyrdom, like blow themselves up and things like that, as well. So, this, and that's probably the Venus Jupiter in Pisces that's been activated over and over again in his chart. So these, you know, all of this is happening on an eclipse, or the two eclipses, eclipse season. And we had an eclipse at 28 degrees Aquarius aspecting this eclipse the day he was born. You just can't make this stuff up in many ways. There's probably loads we could say, but I don't think we've got time to spend too much time on every chart. But you say something, because I know you've got something to
Oh,
add.
no, I think we should go on to the one to
Okay.
compare. Yeah, because
Mm,
there is no such thing as coincidence department.
mm. So I'm just getting him up, and then I'm going to get the um, Khamenei chart um, up as well. But first, we'll look at Netanyahu's. So Netanyahu was born 10 years later, also on the day of an eclipse. We do have a birth time for him, though some people claim that might not be right, but I don't know. I got this from Nick Dagan Best database, so I believe this time is probably pretty established. So another one, born on the day of the eclipse, but the eclipse was at 28 degrees Libra, which is exactly opposing 28 degrees Aries, the eclipse that Khamenei was born on. Netanyahu's chart also has a 12-degree Sag Venus and 13-degree Sag ascendant, which the ascendant of the USA is 12 degrees Sag. There's so many tie-ins. I'll let you talk about the Mars.
Oh, well, a number of things. All right. So his Mars is on, he shares a Mars placement with Trump. So his Mars is on Trump's ascendant. His Mars is opposite the US moon, which is the people. And so there's a real, I am the leader. It's real ego driven. And I think he made an address in the last week that sounded like he was in charge of the U.S., which is kind of odd. But I want to point out with that 27 Libra sun, the Aries new moon in April is at 27 Aries, opposite that sun. So there could be something ticking along that comes up slash to a head by
So
then.
So I'll just put that around, but I just wanted to say that Netanyahu and the Likud and his version of far right Zionism believe in what's called a greater Israel, and that does have a lot of ties with Christian Zionism in the US, which is the evangelical rapture wing of the evangelicals. And you know, a lot of people do think that Israel kind of has too much say or rules kind of the US because of APAC and all these other kind of monetary ties, which is Venus, which is his Venus on the ascendant of the USA Sibley chart. So, you know, I'm just here to say they're players in the thing, and this is what the astrology suggests. So,
And the late Ayatollah's son,
mm-hmm,
his solar eclipse sun is right opposite Netanyahu's solar eclipse sun,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
the Ayatollah's sun is where the Aries new moon is going to be 2/3 of the way through April. So put a
mm-hmm.
pin in this.
Well, that new moon's at 27 degrees,
Right.
isn't it? Because it's moved back a degree, so it'll be exactly
Yeah.
opposing Netanyahu's too. So, you know,
That's why I bring it. Yeah.
yeah,
There's more to come.
these players are, you know, so tied into the astrology is kind of my point. So, you know, I just kind of wanted to educate people about these end times because we're going to talk about that a bit more when we talk about the Saturn-Neptune conjunctions as well. So the other person that was born on an eclipse is the Donald. So, you know, we've looked at his chart many times. His was at a different degree, but we've had the eclipses squaring his eclipse degree. So it's quite unusual, I think, to have three people born on an eclipse really involved as key players in world events. Um,
It
so
certainly
that's,
heightens the extreme nature of what's going on.
yeah, It does. And they all have ties in some way or another astrologically. We could go through them all. But do you want to say anything much about him or
Yeah, look at
we
that. 28 degree Pisces Vesta, where the new moon
oh
is.
yeah,
Exactly.
and
In
that's the
his
heart
house,
of the state. Yeah.
in the house of open enemies and allies.
Yes, that's where the new moon will be. And in fact, maybe I'll bring up the other person's chart that we're going to quickly look at as well before we talk about kind of this big picture. Is Pete Hegseth, who is our Department of Secretary of Defense, not War. Anyway, and he's been basically pronouncing that Donald Trump is, the chosen one. And there's more pictures of Donald Trump with, everybody putting their hands on him and surrounding him and all that kind of evangelical stuff, for want of a better word. But his moon is at 28 Pisces on Donald Trump's Vesta, and the next new moon on the 18th is activating both of those. And Pisces can have that messianic kind of, rapture kind of energy to it in its extreme. And we've had this real extreme Pisces energy for quite some time, but it's been stronger recently as Saturn joined Neptune in Pisces. Neptune went into Pisces 2011. And then the Pisces energy kind of built and built and built. And I kind of feel that that's brought this more kind of end times kind of energy into the zeitgeist, if you like. So that's why I call it a holy war, because it's the three branches of Abrahamic religions too.
Pisces also, especially a Pisces moon. Pisces moon, my experience, has a great deal of, well, they're just boundless. They're boundaryless. They have a great deal of difficulty seeing where somebody else, like where the borderline is between them and someone else. And they can become very, very overwhelmed by other people's energy and by what's going on. And it is, I'm not saying that all Pisces moons have substance abuse problems, but this man has a history of it. And so just watch for whatever emotionality comes out of him around this. And this new moon on the 18th could.
And you talked about some of it in the news. He's talked about, we're not going to go woke. We're going, it's almost like we're fighting for, might is right, and the truth, and all of that kind of religious war kind of BS from my perspective. Anyway. So I could put the
Saturn-Neptune conjunction was on his Pholus, and both planets are on it now.
There you go, right down there.
So that's a dissolution. That's a dissolution of bringing energies into the material realm.
And it's right at the bottom of his chart. So we do have a time for him. It was AA rated on Astro Databank. The Virgo eclipse was on his Mars in the 9th house, which also can have that kind of religious fervor kind of energy to it. Because all these placements in charts don't always have, one kind of meaning. You have to kind of look at the whole chart. So we're trying to bring in some of the things, that are suggesting that he has that kind of religious fervor, really. Also, no boundaries and can't kind of really see what's really the truth. He also has a Neptune in Sagittarius, which is visionary, but also can have a tendency not to be able to kind of see the truth of it as well.
And it's on Trump's moon, so
it is, yeah.
They can just go have their little international fantasies.
And I, my view of a chart is always it's a chart of your potential. How you live it is kind of up to you. that's that's why I don't like these pronouncements of this means one thing. But you know, if you look at his whole chart, um, he's definitely kind of a bit unable to see what's real and what's truth, and he's a bit boundaryless in very many ways. But I'm sure there's lots of other aspects. Of course, his ascendant is also on the ascendant of the USA. So there you go. Just don't know
Well,
why.
that Mars in Sagittarius, I mean, that's like a cosplay.
Mm-hmm.
He has a makeup studio in his office. But that's, I mean, people. Kristi Noem was accused of being cosplay, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I would agree with that. But I think there's a cosplay element to this as well, and
Mm-hmm.
like he's acting like he thinks this is what a really manly man is supposed to do, or like a military person is supposed to do, and it doesn't have anything to do with what military leaders are taught
I
about the
agree.
rules.
Yeah. And also the to go back to that new moon, it's square his Venus. And let me just get that exact again. Hadn't really noticed that before. So he's got a moon square Venus anyway, and his Venus was retrograde, which actually it's the rarest. If you've got retrogrades in your chart, people with Venus retrograde are the least number, and they are associated with, or they're very connected to the Venus retrograde cycle, which I work with. But I'll talk more about that another time. But just this being on his moon and square his Venus, it's going to bring up things, about boundaries and about ideas as well, about, you know, he doesn't like women. He doesn't think women should be in the military. That's one thing, and you bet you hear him talking about that again with all of this.
What I keep hearing is playing both sides of the fence. So let's wait and see what that ends up
Mm,
meaning.
it could do, yeah, for sure. Yeah. But also, he's done some very dodgy things with money in the military, right,
Oh,
as well.
absolutely.
Hmm. And other people, you know, you mentioned he kind of let go of a lot of other people before this war started. So, he's tied into the astrology as well, though. Just that's it. He just is. So he's a player in this big act that's playing out right now. So I think we're going to stop the share and just do a bit of talking. So,
Could you put the chart back up? I saw one more thing I want to
oh
mention to
yeah,
people
absolutely. Hmm.
right when it was going away.
Mm,
So sorry. So see, he has
I don't say
uh
sorry.
he has Vesta at 4 degrees Pisces in the second house of money and values and resources, and there's going to be a lunar eclipse at that spot in August.
Oh no, this is the transiting Vesta. So,
Oh, that's transiting Vesta. This is
mm,
my eyes being bad. Ignore me.
but it is going to oppose his
Oh,
Jupiter,
right.
and
Okay.
we did quickly look at that, because this war is, it's not going to end very quickly. But um, so there's a partial lunar eclipse at 4 Pisces on August the 28th. So that's going to oppose his Jupiter. But then on February the 20th next year, there's a 2-degree Virgo lunar eclipse. So that could be kind of the end of him, the end of his career, if he's not gone before. Both eclipses could take him out,
Well,
right?
that's the house of legal matters and
Mm-hmm.
litigation. So
Mm-hmm.
there'll be something. There'll be something. I don't want
Yeah.
people to go, oh my God, will he still be in office? That's not what we're saying.
No, we're not. Maybe it'll be, yeah, Nuremberg trials kind of thing. Exactly.
I don't see
You
how we
know.
get around them. I don't see how we
Hmm.
get around them.
Yeah, but maybe we'll look at those eclipses in greater detail at another time with his
Another
chart,
time, yeah.
because
Right, right.
he's tied into those next eclipses in a big way for people that want a bit more hope, because we've got other things to talk about now. So you start with the more recent Saturn Neptune
Okay,
conjunctions, and then
here's
mhm.
what I've done. A lot of astrologers have been talking about Saturn and Neptune and their conjunctions in whatever signs, they happen about every 36 years, coinciding with big governmental changes. And I have talked about this in my own, I have a talk about it, but I want to point out how we have a couple of cycles coming full circle simultaneously. So it's like a series of like a wheel with a wheel and a wheel of gears, and they're all moving and they line up at the same spot, even though they don't have cycles that are the same length. So just listen to this. Saturn and Neptune were conjunct in 1917 when Britain seized Palestine from the Ottomans, which ruled Turkey. And that's when the Russian Revolution was. In 1953, Saturn and Neptune were conjunct. The U.S. and British intelligence services backed a coup overthrowing the Iranian government, and the Shah returned from exile. Dwight Eisenhower was inaugurated, who later warned about the military-industrial complex, and Jeffrey Epstein was born. This Saturn-Neptune conjunction time was during Leo-Aquarius eclipses with the North Node in Aquarius, which we are now under, and the node's moving into Aquarius in July. All right. So that's one hot year. 1989, also hot. There was a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Ayatollah Khamenei died. Ayatollah Khamenei became the supreme leader, and this was during Virgo Pisces eclipses with Pisces and North Node. So that's, and in that year, the Berlin Wall fell, leading to the collapse of the Soviet Union the next year. So we've got things involving Israel, Iran, Russia, Epstein. All right. During the last pass of the Leo Aquarius eclipses in 2008, the UN Security Council passed a unanimous resolution reaffirming demands that Iran stop enriching uranium. And Israel launched a month-long full-scale invasion of Gaza to prevent Hamas and other groups from launching rockets. In 2009, during Leo Aquarius eclipses with the North Node in Aquarius, Iran admitted that it was building a uranium enrichment plant, but insisted it was for peaceful purposes. So Iran's nuclear capability, an issue during the last time, or a question, during the last time we had Leo Aquarius eclipses, but wait, there's more. Right-wing parties prevailed in Israel's election, and Benjamin Netanyahu formed the government. He was born on eclipse. He was installed on an eclipse or during an eclipse time. Okay.
Yeah. And so what years were they again? 1917, right? So that
Okay.
was at that conjunction was at 4 Leo. If anybody wants to know, just the astrologers kind of listening. That's all I wanted to say. And 53 was at 21 Libra, and I'm immediately thinking this ties into those charts we looked at, but I'm not going to go through them again.
Absolutely. Okay,
And
89.
1989 was 11 and 10 Capricorn, because it was 3 times. It was a big one there. I've got a list of them from
So that's the Saturn,
Richard Nolly's site.
Saturn-Neptune conjunctions. Okay.
Yeah. So Kathy showed you how they tied in with the eclipses too. But I also I've done a presentation, and I've talked about it a few times. This Saturn-Neptune conjunction that we just had is at 0 Aries, which is the world point of creation. And I've also linked it to the astrological great age, which is generally about 4 ages, kind of the first quarter, the second quarter, the third, and the fourth quarter, which is the fall in a way. But anyway, the last Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 Aries was in 4361 BCE. I did a video on it with a client of mine, Kat Collette, so you can find that in my videos if you want to go and look at it. But I thought I would look back at a couple of things because I couldn't help being astounded by these 3 leaders being the heads of the three branches of the Abrahamic religions. So don't call me on exact years because I had to do quick Googling on this one. So Judaism was the first Abrahamic religion to get settled. And that was settled according to a Jewish Reddit. It converted to well, I'm going to share this chart quickly because they converted it to 1313 before Common Era, let's call it. So hang on a second, got to get to the front, and I'm going to tell you when there was a Saturn-Neptune conjunction then as well. So I looked at the Saturn-Neptune conjunction nearest to that date, and that was at 15 Scorpio, which is another world point, okay? And look at all of this Pisces energy here. Chiron, Vesta, Pallas Athena, Juno, Ceres, and Hygeia. I usually take her out, but I did this one very quickly on my phone. That's why it's a different color. There was also a great square. All I wanted to bring up on this is how these degrees are being hit now from that time of when this Abrahamic religion, which was the first monotheistic religion, took hold. I did study of religions in college, so forgive me, I go way into this kind of stuff. And so, the Jupiter then, which is often related to faith and belief, was at 1 Aquarius, with Pluto has been going back and over. Uranus, which we didn't even know existed, of course, most of these we didn't, was opposing that. So that's being activated. So, but, I haven't had time to look at the eclipses, but we know there's a new moon coming on right on this slot. And we know that's where Saturn and Neptune were hovering before it's so close to the zero Aries point, because that's like crossing a threshold from the old to the new, right? Mm-hmm. And this, in other non-religious terms, people have been talking about this falling age as the patriarchy, whatever you want to call it, where the dominator cultures and things like that. So we're seeing the extreme expression of it again coming out, and it's related right to the founding, I think. Would you agree?
Right. And the question of homeland and state is core to it, with Vesta being there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And Ceres.
So
So yeah. Mhm.
so kind of all these things were seeded into these religions as they were formed. Yeah. So anyway, then I thought, I'm going to look when Islam was formed. And it was about 7th century. Of course, all of these things, Muhammad, was given, he said, I was looking at Christianity first. Christianity obviously came into being at the birth of Christ. Nobody knows exactly when that was, but at 53 Common Era, there was a Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 12 Pisces, which is where we've just had the lunar eclipse. And that probably would have been around the time of, Paul on the road to Damascus, that kind of thing, which really informed modern Christianity. And Paul was not a fan of women. That's how come we don't have women priests and things in the Catholic Church and things like that. It became patriarchal, monotheistic religion. Not a fan of organized religion, sorry. Anyway, but these things are tied in, right? And they're being highlighted by the eclipses again. And the Islamic one, 7th century, but we had 625 Common Era. We had a Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 13 Virgo, exactly opposing the and where this eclipse, the lunar eclipse, that launched this war, basically. You you know, astrology just astounds me every day.
But it's the same, it's the opposite side of the same coin.
Yeah,
That's fascinating.
and I think this shows that this is one almighty holy war of all these things that arose in this, last quarter era of the great year of humanity. Most of our written history and things has been, only based on since writing came into being, which was after that 0 degree Aries Saturn-Neptune conjunction 3 ages ago. Just,
So you can look at this as a rebirth, okay, everybody? This Saturn-Neptune
yeah,
conjunction it's like a rebirth of civilization.
it is. And to go to the people I've read and interviewed about it, um, like the Hopi and the Hindu Yugas and the astrological great year, they all have a similar amount of years for the great um, cycle, or the great year as it's called in astrology. It's about 26,000 years. And most of these cosmologies agree that we've been kind of in this falling um, era where, to quote Bibhu Dev Misra, who wrote a book called Yuga Shift, he said, humans have been getting stupider. So, but conversely, if you watch carefully, you'll notice a lot of people also, their consciousness is expanding and people want that connectedness again and things. They will, the even science is saying, the quantum physics says but the fact that we are separate and that we control and dominate everything, which is what was in the falling age came to believe, is just not true. Where everything is connected, and so the divine feminine is rising to be equal.
One of my favorite authors from childhood who affected a whole lot of people, who was very, very active in the Episcopal Church, a devout Christian, Madeleine L'Engle, I heard say that she believed that quantum physicists were the theologians of our time. So,
Well, there literally is a couple of them that have kind of had this religious awakening through studying quantum physics,
mhm.
but a religious awakening in a different way of the patriarchal religions. So take that as you will if you are a person who of faith, because I personally think the cosmos is the divine. Um, that's my and I think quantum physics proves that, but that's my opinion. So, I think probably most of you that follow us are probably of that same mind, to be quite honest. I think we're longing and we see the move back to it as a response to what we see at this end of empire, end times, whatever you want to call it. We go, this is horrible. We don't want to do this anymore. you know.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, this week, a military vet was protesting that we should not be
Yes.
doing this. Got his
Yeah.
arm broken as his thoughts, but we have people who actually know what goes on in war who are saying, "Don't do this."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's affecting all parts of the government, and the government's the global, globally, the world order's shifting because everything was built on this old paradigm. So who knows what it's going to shake out like? But I think the astrology says it's going to be good, personally. So.
Very empowering. So find
Mm,
your inner Wonder Woman or Xena Warrior Princess or
mm,
Queen Bodacia or whatever your inspirational image of absolute spiritual
mm.
empowerment is. That's what we're moving
Yeah,
into
and
this weekend.
And if you want to know what to do on a practical level, maybe put your personal faith beliefs aside or something, I don't know, and just say, what can I do to bring people together? We do hear more people saying we need to come together, but one thing I'm following is it's a former Black Panther speaks on.
Hmm.
I've mentioned him before, but him and some other people have formed this thing called standards, not force. And to me, that just speaks of that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Just the words, people are kind of coming together to kind of, do, instead of just fighting against. It's a different approach, and it's happening in lots of other places too. So, mhm, cool. All right, everybody. So don't forget to check out our classes and websites, and maybe next week we'll just get down to more mundane things. Who knows with what's happening at this end times?
Yeah.
Mm. All right. See you next time, everybody.